Back with another episode of Semi-Pro. Today I'm bringing with me xner, a CSGO commentator specializing in ESEA MDL, and he's also commentated some open qualifiers for things like some dream hacks in the past. He also hosts his own weekly show called Counter Nature, and we've brought him on today to talk about the latest developments in mid-tier NA and ask the evergreen question: is NACS really dying? And that is really our first question here, because we've heard a lot about, some talent has been dropping off, some people have been moving on to Valorant, some people were affected by the ESEA MDL match fixing bans. Other people, Tarek has been on there saying, NACS is dead, the famous tweet. Even before that, if we want to really read into the situation, we can look at like Stewie2K's tweet where he's talking about like 10 a.m. matches, and there's this
Yeah.
this thought process that maybe the pros in NA are taking things a little bit less seriously or a little bit focused on the wrong things. So what is your take on this as somebody who's really focused on that mid tier of NA, which is essentially what is under fire now, or on fire potentially, depending on who you ask? Do you think that things are looking bad, or what's your take generally speaking?
Yeah, things are certainly looking bad at the moment. I'm not gonna ever say that like Counter Strike is dying necessarily, because like that's been general theme for like, I mean, before I was born, like when this game has come out, like it's not gonna die. I mean, I can say that knocking on wood, but like North America, it has so many people, like yourself and like Dust 2, like Rush B, like just working to like kind of create more fans, and it's definitely at a bad point right now. Valorant has been, I mean, the just like absolute draining of talent in North America, both new and old, which is like created so much problems. Like MDL, like this season, even compare it to like last season, you see such a stark difference. There was like 5 advanced move up teams, maybe 4 total into MDL. And like some of those MDL teams, while it's such good experience for them to get, like they're not they're not ready. I just don't think, and it's very evident with their score lines. You've got Imperium, who have shown a lot of potential. That's getting into the weeds a little bit more, but yeah, it's gotten drained for sure. But I'll never say it's like dying.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to falsify as well, because viewer numbers and player numbers are not
Yeah.
necessarily in a dangerous position. It's more the endemic talent of the professional players or the coaches who are affected by the bans or anything of that nature, who, regardless of whether or not the nature of their departure is like nefarious or not, regardless of whether or not it's because of some sort of allegation, or if it's just them moving on to greener pastures. I mean, even, we
Mhm.
saw Chat, I'm a Pet, who was formerly of Evil Geniuses, now then of 100 Thieves, and now of Valorant, right? Not necessarily in the game anymore. Obviously, some higher level up players as well have departed. So, at that point, the question has to be asked: when you're talking about teams moving up from advanced, and you're talking about teams that are coming from a lower tier of that mid tier, and then sort of moving up the ladder, as it were, but it's not predicated on necessarily their talent. It's more predicated on the absence of people who were previously above them. What does that say, generally speaking, for like the people who are trying to come up and learn? Because you did talk about people who were older players, who are more veteran players, who had been here for a while. Obviously, Steele was a big move when he decided to no longer be a part of the scene. And not that anybody can necessarily blame him, but that's a big voice, a very respected voice for all intents and purposes in the community. That's no longer there to bring up the old players, or the newer players rather. So, what would you say to where the trajectory is of some of these teams that are coming in, that you were talking about, when it comes to those teams that are breaking new ground, coming in hot, and they're replacing some other players who have long since departed now?
I think the biggest thing is time. Like you do need more time to kind of develop as a team. It's certainly the case with like, and I'm gonna use some specific examples. RBG's a team that's kind of been like hot on in the MDL scene, because they're gonna finish in 5th place. Like a really good season by them, and this is their first season in MDL, and they've been together, I believe, for 3 whole seasons of advanced. So they've stuck together for so long, and then they immediately are showing signs of success in MDL. And I think that I see that same sort of potential for like the bottom tier teams that are the recent move ups, like Imperium and like Kinship, who are both 16th and 17th seed only because Swole Patrol forfeited their season. So um, seeing those 2 teams, like you see so much potential in the players and like potential in the squad as and unit as a whole, but like all they need is time. And it's a good excuse, like yeah, time is like I don't know. I just don't want to see like them like dismantle because of one bad season, like their introductory season into MDL. I'd like to see like some stable rosters, some five-man rosters, kind of make their move in a similar style to like Whalers, who I mean might be making a pro league move soon.
Do you think that there's something to there was a little bit further back when ESL Pro League announced some shuffles and the fact that they were closing off certain slots and so now some sort of like tier 2 on a global scale teams lost out on positions. This is I think over a year ago now. It's which is ancient history in Counter-Strike terms. But
Yeah,
a lot of people sort of cited that as like for one, people were wondering why, like for example, the CSPPA who partnered with ESL before that in the same year, they're like, why were you allowing this sort of thing to happen? Because it screwed a lot of people out over their positions. And now, like in some cases, rosters were only held together at that level because they had a slot so that they could guarantee a certain amount of exposure to sponsors and a certain amount of games played at a somewhat professional level, right? So when they see something that's in some ways above where some of these other smaller tier teams are, and they see even at that level it's not very stable, right? Do you think that there might be an issue with maybe on the organizational level, maybe also in the back of the players' minds themselves, that if they don't manage to rise above and get to a really high standing, or they don't manage to get picked up by a better team, that there really isn't that much more of a future, especially now that things are even less stable than ever? Do you think that's somewhat in the back of people's heads when they're playing through some of these MDL games?
yeah. There's no doubt that there's an extraordinary amount of like pressure that goes into trying to just instantly make the move up. I mean, you'll see it a lot of times, like teams that don't make move ups in advance totally fall apart, totally dismantle. Like you'll lose two or three players off of it, and at that point, like you lose all your motivation for that specific team. And it's not like all of that work that goes into that team is all void, but it certainly plays a factor into it. So you look at things like that, and then on top of that, you've got MDL teams and orgs that are pressuring you, which is a huge factor. But um, what was the question I was supposed to be answering?
Just that whether or not the fact that it's not necessarily stable at any real point until you get to tier 1 globally,
Yeah,
that is that really a factor that maybe has encouraged people to move on to greener pastures in that sense?
yeah. Are you referring to like the training season in MDL? Because that's for sure a huge issue.
Well, why don't you
Um,
go into depth about why, like how that particularly pertains to this then, because I'm curious as to your
yeah.
thoughts on it.
So like in terms of like stability and like holding on to that EPL spot that like every MDL team's after, and likely every org is maybe pressuring their MDL team to get after. I mean that's I feel like is the real money for orgs is trying to get their EPL spot. Like no one no org is like excited to be, sitting in MDL for a long period of time. They're all gunning for a spot in that pro league because that's where the exposure, like you mentioned earlier. And when you play a full season for a which the prize pools for MDL are fantastic, like very like a lot of money to be made, and then they added the cash cups, which is a whole nother like improvement on a system that North America's in desperate need for. But when you don't have a chance to really get that move up, I feel like your motivation's going to be uh lacking. I mean, you have no chance to progress, and I feel like as a player, that's like your number one goal. And then it becomes a factor of like, how am I going to get into the pro league spot, like as a player? And the only answer in this case, if there's practice season, it's not going to be through like playing as a team. It's not going to be playing as a five-man unit. It's going to be having the greatest MDL season, and some tier one org like Cloud9 or Liquid or whoever like needs a player. Gen G probably in this case is going to pick you up and pull you into the pro league, because I mean that might be the only route that you have.
For clarification, just for the people who aren't fully aware, could you explain a little bit about what actually the training or practice seasons are for those people among us who don't know?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if this is the same case in EU. I imagine it probably is, but there's only 2 seasons of ESL Pro League every year, and there's 3 seasons of ESEA. So, and at least ESEA MDL, and as well as the lower leagues below it, but mainly focusing on MDL league. There's 3 seasons, so obviously if you've got 2 seasons of the Pro League there's going to be a season where in MDL you can't make any changes because you've already got the set number of teams for the pro league. So um, basically, there's a full season where no move ups are made. For MDL, there's only move downs, so it causes some worries there.
Yeah, it's almost like reinforcing commitment issues, like you were talking about before, where sometimes a player might or multiple players might decide to bail out of a team, and then suddenly you've got no motivation. You don't know who you're going to be able to pick up, if you're going to be able to pick up. Suddenly, everybody that's still on the roster is asking themselves, "Does it make sense for me to remain on this roster?"
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I was curious about, because you were talking about like the cash cups and the prize pools, it seems like there are still a fair number of reasons to try to get after the competition when it comes to the actual competitive league that we're dealing with here. So could you outline in your opinion what some things are that we as the people who are looking down to that second tier of North America can be looking forward to in the future, or some of the players who are in there can be looking forward to? If somebody's trying to figure out like how to get excited for some of the games that are coming up there, is there something there to engage the viewers and also something there to incentivize the players in your opinion?
So, I mean, this season, I'm ready for Land's ESEA. I know we said positive side of things, but ESEA canceled their global challenge, so it won't be a Land. But I believe this season there's going to be move ups for both EU and North America, so that's a huge plus side. There's going to be, I mean, the possibility of most likely the Whalers or Team One, and in terms of like excitement for North America, the Whalers are going to be my team to like keep an eye out for. They are fresh off of a really nice best of three. It was with one of their stand-ins of Boo, but still, like if you can do it with a stand-in, a player who's been there for a little while, you've got yourself a good system to back up um, your firepower. So I do think that the Whalers are kind of like North America's kind of tier two hope at the moment, and then next in line for me is RBG. They're a team that I've been following since advanced. Like I've casted so many of their games, and like every time I see them consistently improving to the point where now they're like number 5 in MDL. So it's really good stuff from them.
So some teams to watch out for, and obviously some events that are coming up for the players as well to keep on the look for, and maybe stay excited about Counter Strike, even though Valorant might be tantalizing to them, right? So I was
Yeah.
actually a little bit curious as to if we could go a little bit deeper into some of the problems that maybe some people don't necessarily touch on, or if you have some ideas for a different angle on this, if there's any problems that you have seen people say are problems but aren't actually problems, if you know what I mean. Like, are there things that people have misidentified, like people are saying this is a huge issue but in actuality maybe they're overestimating it or they're missing the mark entirely?
Um. Yeah, I can speak on some like things that I feel like are misunderstood, and then things that are like totally right and like spot on with North America. One of the things that is like the most misunderstood is that like a lot of times players are like perceived as lazy or like on lack of motivation, but like so many of these players have been put through like the ringer, with like move ups and like roster instability,
Yes.
like constantly plugging in and plugging out of these players. Like it is not easy to try and like motivate yourself every day. You're practicing from probably around like 6 p.m. to 11. Like a lot of these players are working their butts off and they get perceived as like probably lazy or like they're pugging too much or whatever the case is. But um, it's definitely like, I don't know. I've seen like how hard these players work and like how much pressure they put on themselves. You see the tweets after a loss and like they're so upset. They're angry and like they know what they need to fix instantly. Like it's really cool to see from a caster's perspective and someone who follows the teams pretty closely in the league. So there's no laziness when it comes to these teams. There's some laziness, of course, but very little laziness when it comes to top teams. They put in a lot of work. But as for a spot on like perspective on North America, is that it's just too unstable at the moment. There's not a lot of stable teams. You've got, I mean, really only like I would say I'm trying to look at this season so far of MDL, and I believe the only team that hasn't made a move is Team One RBG.
It's a short list, is what it sounds like.
That might be it. I think it's 2 teams, and one of them is Brazilian. So lack of stability is rampant in MDL at the moment.
It feels like maybe that's something as well that historically anyway has been one of those things where the more people do it, it's like a cycle, right? Where if it's perceived to be the way things are, if that's just how things have been, and you don't have anybody here to like rein in the troops and say, hey, wait a sec, we don't need to just disband because we didn't place highest or whatever.
Yeah.
And the longer that goes on, it almost becomes self-perpetuating in a way, because it's definitely been a complaint that I've seen before. But when you actually look at the stats of teams that do it, it does seem like we're seeing higher percentages of the league's roster itself make those changes to various scale, of course. So I was curious as well. You brought up Team One being obviously a Brazilian team, and even a little bit before, at a more tier 1 level, we had obviously 100 Thieves and Furia meeting a few different times. And this is like a majority Australian roster going up against a Brazilian roster. And it was obviously in a North American regional final in this particular case. So a lot of people were, they had the memes out. They were saying, oh yeah, nice NA final, pretty epic. You would expect EG and Team Liquid, but of course these teams are also North American regionally in terms of where they're based. So in a roundabout way, the question is, do you think that for North America, like, I guess really just America and Canada, for that kind of viewership metric, do you think we've sort of missed the mark here because of the fact that we don't have any American and Canadian mixed teams at the highest level? I mean, obviously we have Team Liquid and we have Evil Geniuses, but we don't seem to have those people, at least lately, coming together and meeting in the finals and putting on a big show for us. Viewership seems fine for those particular matches, but do you think that there's some sort of like psychological thing where, even the best teams in our region aren't even from this region? Do you think that might be wearing on either players or fans at this point?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It's so hard to like get excited for a final when you don't have your like representation. I mean, I imagine there's plenty of regions in this world, and North America specifically, you feel that same sort of pain, just not being able to watch their favorite team in the grand final. I mean, that grand final, I believe it went to all 5, right? Or was it a sweep by Furia?
There was one that was a sweep by Fury, and then there was another one that was, I think, 3-1, which was the more recent one before
Okay.
100 Thieves disbanded. But yeah, it was more than once was when they met.
Yeah, two finals, yeah, in a row, and there's no doubt that like the viewership, I feel like in North America, I've actually done some stats for MDL specifically, and like we're down, of course, with Valorant, and of course with like talent kind of leaking out, but MDL's viewership is slowly drained. There's some external factors, like how they have the partnership program where they let casters like me into their like their casting, and that goes into viewership. But even in a tier 2 level, you see that North American viewerships are down. At a tier 1 level, though, it does feel like there's a lack of like fandom at certain points. I'm not sure. It's probably because of no lands and the fact that when you tune in, it's a semifinals and you're just watching Furia destroy Liquid, and you're watching Furia destroy EG right afterwards. So it definitely is. It's painful to see that as a North American fan, and to say that you want the viewership to be constantly good because that's where the money is. And I don't know. It's tough to say what the real reason what the decline is, though.
The Brazilians obviously bring their own viewership,
Oh
sometimes in
yeah,
spades as well. So it's kind of
yeah,
a hard sell for anybody who's just looking at it from a purely statistical angle, even if they adjust for
yeah,
like demographic or whatever. But I always have to wonder about that, because this is a region where we've had some foreign competitors come in theory, in terms of where they originate from geographically speaking. But at the same time, they are obviously proving to be quite competent. So you can't take anything away from them. You can't,
right. Oh
do
yeah,
do anything there. But at the same time,
they're nuts.
it's difficult to really feel like you have the same amount, like as a fan, as opposed to as an analyst or as a commentator. You have to kind of put yourself in the fans' shoes there, and it is a little understandable why some of them might be a little bit less excited. But the other thing that you brought out is the fact that we don't have any lands, and what has happened in their space, sort of vacuum here, is that we've seen a huge number of games played online. And so this has been a big topic of discussion, not just in North America, but worldwide, where a lot of, MTG tournaments, be they DreamHacks or ESL, generally speaking, have a huge amount of stranglehold on the calendar. The schedule seems a little crazy to a lot of people. Obviously, the CSPPA had to step in and say, well, at least by next year, you've really got to change these rules so that we can't possibly be, playing from a grand final to a group stage within like 24 hours or something like that, which has happened recently with Heroic.
Yeah.
So the question then is, do you think that the tournament scheduling as well has affected viewership, not just in tier one, but also in tier two and lower?
Yeah, yeah, it certainly has. Like, if I'm so glad that EG and Fury decided to move to EU, because it's actually some new matchups, and even all of the switch ups in EU at the moment with Blast. That tournament has been so good so far because of, like, you got the new rosters of Complexity with JKS. It's been a blast to watch, and even like FaZe with Olaf, who, I mean, did okay, but like, it was exciting to see nonetheless. Like, Olaf is back um after a while. But yeah, it's so nice. Just Blast has been a breath of fresh air. So maybe it's just like my recency bias going on as to why probably the viewership is better for Blast right now. But also, like, just constantly seeing, and this is like the most common thing that I see in every like talk show, is like a Vitality and IP matchup. I don't know the exact number of times that they've played each other, but it's way too much for like any sort of storyline to be told. Like, constantly just playing each other, the same teams as well. Like, you'll see it like Furia versus EG or Furia versus Liquid. Like, those matchups like are good once a month, but nonstop it feels so, it gets old for sure. So I'm certain that plays a factor in the viewership kind of being fizzling out a little bit, no doubt.
Another thing I've heard a little bit less recently, but obviously more at the beginning, is when we first started with this online era, a lot of people were saying, I can't get into the games as much. It's just not the same. It seems like not only are they closely packed together and longer in terms of how many series there are, we're seeing way more best of fives, for example. We're seeing like decider matches that are best of three for like deciding fifth and sixth place and stuff like that. So not only do we have more matches and not only are they longer, but they're also online. There's something different about it. It seems like maybe people have started to adapt to that. The people who have stuck through and decided that they're going to
Yeah.
continue watching CS, that doesn't come up as much. But just from your own perspective, how much of the shift is, not just as a fan, but also as a commentator, how much do you think there has been a shift in terms of how people can get invested from the lands we had before to the online matches we have now?
I think the best way is to like try and, I don't know, teach other people about it. Like, I have a Discord where like some of my friends that don't even play CS watch CS with me, and like I'm telling them storylines, and like once you get invested in it yourself, like starting talking about the players, you build up your favorite players. Like talking about how Olaf was, I mean, one of the best players at one point in time, and now he's back. Like, you can develop storylines. It's real fun. As a commentator, you probably do that way more than anybody else, any normal person. But that sort of shift, like even if it's online, even if like the prize pool's $33,000, and they had to play 37 matches to get there or something crazy like that. It's fun to watch the um especially teams that haven't really gotten like a big win, like Vitality, who constantly been in second place. Like, you're watching
Yes.
them in the finals, and it's so close but so far at times. I don't know. I don't know the best way to do that as a normal person, because I feel like my brain would just go to like instantly like what sort of like story can I talk about to like make this more interesting. But it's fun to watch. Like, if you're trying to watch Blast, like it's the perfect time to get back into watching CS. Like, Blast has been so far just storyline after storyline. If you look at like even next group, I believe is gonna have MIBR in it. I think. Actually, let me check. No, it's gonna have Furia in it. It will have MIBR as well.
Yeah, and
So that'll be
Astralis, I believe, as well. There's
and G2.
yeah, a lot of really
So like
cool
there's
matchups
every
there.
team right there has a storyline of Astralis is back with Zipex, right?
Yes.
So like literally every team has made a move. MIBR's like made, I believe, 3 moves, 4 moves, right? TRK wasn't on the roster beforehand.
I think he was on the roster before, yeah. So
Okay.
that would be 3, and then plus whatever coach they're fielding now. So
Oh, true. Yeah, so 4 moves total.
right.
Every roster there is totally different and brand new. So like if you're looking to get back into watching CS, it's Monday, It's a perfect time to do it.
So there you go. Some recommendations then. I am curious about essentially how you would contrast the play styles of these European teams compared to the North American ones, or maybe you could at least go a little bit into depth about the North American play style specifically before we go across the pond, because the upside, I guess, although it's kind of a silver lining, really more than just a complete upside, is given the fact that we're seeing these teams fight so many times and meet so many times head on, like you were describing, how many different finals we've seen with Furia spanking the other team in, and obviously Furia has been against EG and Team Liquid before, countless times, because those are essentially like, along with 100 Thieves, those were like the top 4 for a long time in NA. So given that was the circumstance, we got to see a lot of matches. We have a lot of footage. We have a lot of film we could review on that. Do you think that there's a defining characteristic of what separates a North American playstyle from any of the other regional playstyles? Do you think like something about the way that North American CS is played is easy to characterize for you in a different way than everything else?
Yeah, it's I think easy to characterize is the best way to put it, because once like teams have success, they kind of get like reviewed, their demos get watched, and their plays that worked out in a best of 3, like a one off, or maybe a fluke or whatever it is. You know, this is at least for me in recent times, but it's gonna be like I don't know. It's so easily readable. Like you'll see Furia, who's been really motivated in this online era. I imagine like Liquid and EG are motivated as well. Like all of those players are hungry to win. But like Furia, like do so much review in their demos and stuff like that. They're constantly working on their strats and adjusting, and I feel like that's played a key role into their success because no one's able to read them. Like I mean, part of it is arts, like just totally like insane IGLing and entrying, but like it, if you look at Furia's style of play and then you compare it to EU, like if you look at Blame F, the IGLing is so unreadable. Like in every match, it's so hard to get a grasp on it. Like they're constantly changing it up. They're constantly um, doing something different, and as soon as the other team gets a read on it, they changed it up. Like it's something totally out of the ordinary, totally new. Whereas sometimes in North America, it feels like you catch something, not complacency, but catch like a strat that works, and you're like, well, let's try it next game. Um, Maybe it's like an outside rush on nuke or something, and you do that same exact play, but this time Furia watched your demo, and they're gonna punish you for that play. Like you can't get away with that kind of stuff twice against some of the EU teams, basically, and Furia as an example.
If we go all the way back to the Boston Major that was won by Cloud9, essentially in that era, before Cloud9 actually took that trophy, the
Mhm.
consensus seems to have been that North American teams were just like a step below European teams. There was never
Yeah.
a chance that they were going to be able to win a mega trophy like the major trophy. And then, of course, it happened, and people thought, well, is this going to be consistent? And it took a little bit of time before Team Liquid kicked into gear the following couple of years and started to take a lot of stuff home. Now that we're in the online era, and now that we have some European teams mixing it up with North American teams, with the North American teams moving over, the question then has to be asked again, unfortunately, because we'd like to have a clear-cut answer on this one, but it seems a little scary to ask now. Do you think that European teams are just head and shoulders above North American teams at the top tier?
We'll have to. I want to wait and see. I would group like Furia into that scenario and see how they kind of do in this next in their group on Monday. But um, as for like North American teams, we saw EG get out as one of they were the first eliminated in their group. Although I will say, like they showed some serious they showed some grit. Like they took a map off of OG, who basically clean sweeped Navi once and then beat them, only dropping a map to them. Which is, I mean, Navi's looking in good form as well. They look nearly just as good as OG. But like, here's the thing about EU, and I was mentioning this to one of my casting friends, is that even if you're in the lower bracket, like you're not going to play a Whalers in the lower bracket. You're playing an IP. in the lower bracket, like it's not getting any easier for you in that lower round one that they got put in off the start. Like, sure, you have a tough start. You have to play OG. You're kicking things off, and you're like, we got a map and we took them pretty close, I believe. Yeah, it was 16-14 on overpass that they lost. So, I mean, they looked really good, but like then right afterwards, you have to play NIP and like overtime on Inferno, which is a map that they're really good on. But they weren't able to close it out. So I don't know. It's hard to say whether or not just yet off of this one result, but you're definitely onto something when like the practice. I feel like if you compare, you
Yes.
don't really have much teams to practice against in North America. You're going to be practicing against Liquid and Furia if you want top level experienced players like, and maybe Gen G, but even and 100 Thieves, but that's not many teams. Like that's a small pool to scrim and practice against.
And the other concern too is that 100 Thieves are now exited. We don't know where all of those players are going to go yet. Obviously, JK has to Complexity, but aside from that, we're not 100% sure. I think maybe Liaz was.
Jacob in
Oh
Apex
yes,
as
true.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think Liaz was linked to Genji, if I'm not mistaken, by a report, but hasn't
Oh,
yet been
really?
confirmed. I believe so. Yeah. So if we're going on the assumption that obviously they're not forming back into a new team and staying within North
Yeah.
America is the bottom line, right? So they are long gone at this point. And the other question that we have to ask is like, do we just not have enough teams? Is it not just that we don't have enough high quality teams, but it does seem like North America just doesn't have the roster that we see over in Europe. It's kind of an unfair comparison if you compare population of players, but I do feel like we had a couple more contenders back, just a year ago when the lands were coming in. We had Genji take a DreamHack trophy. We had, Liquid taking pretty much everything in the middle of summer.
Yeah.
We had all sorts of storylines come out from even like Chaos when they were first coming up and Steel was still on the roster. There was a lot of improvement there from his previous roster with Ghost. And then, you think to some of the other upstarts that had come up, Rogue when Hiko was on it was kind of an interesting project. So there's a lot of teams that at least could do damage at the tier 2 global level. And there were certainly some teams that could contend at tier 1. And now it seems like maybe Evil Geniuses will find their footing again. Like you were saying, it is only a 2 best of 3s. So hard to make any major sort of sweeping statements or paint with broad brushstrokes there. But the concern is like maybe we just don't have the number of teams that we had before. How do we come back from this? Is this a case where you think that we are going to be looking to people like the New England Whalers and seeing if they can come in, or do you know of any other teams that you think might be able to do some damage once the lands open back up and we can get back to business?
I mean, at this point, like I don't know what tournaments are going to look like in North America anymore with 100 Thieves not being a team. Furia and EG currently competing in EU. Like our North American tournaments are going to be like Gaming, Pain Gaming, who's currently in open right now, but I believe they're going to be making the move up because there actually is an invite spot this season or this season of MDL, rather MDL relegation. So I believe they'll be getting that. I can't imagine another team getting that spot, but um, it's tough to say because again, you mentioned like I don't know what these tournaments are going to look like in North America. They might have to just be like the Whalers being the new team. Like you'll have Whalers, Chaos, Liquid for however long they want to stay in North America. But if North American teams like Liquid and like EG want to remain relevant, they're gonna have to go to EU, and that's the only answer at the moment because they can't keep playing each other and expect to get any sort of new information, get any like you can review demos, but you learn the best by either like losing or winning. It's experience, and right now North America is getting none of it playing each other constantly.
Another thing that you touched on there, obviously, is the big deal about, and you talked about this in a couple of the other answers as well, the fact that you're always getting the same sort of experience when you play the same sort of teams. And it's really difficult to adapt if the caliber of experience that you have, the quality of the practice that you have is going to be less than over in Europe. now, obviously, we saw the Whalers come in and they had that best of three against Furia that everybody got them talking about. And even before that, we obviously saw RGB and a couple of other teams that, or RBG, excuse me, and we had a couple of other teams that were there that were in. I think it was IEM New York was in the North American region where we had a lot of those teams come in on the lower echelon, but fill in with alongside those tier one rosters, and they got some experience that must have been invaluable compared to what they normally get.
Oh yeah.
The question then becomes, if we have examples of really opportunities for the tier two to mix in with the tier one in that sense, at least regionally in North America, and we have the opportunity to take a look at how they stack up and maybe what holes can be filled in or what strategical elements they can use to improve. Do you think that, for example, based on how the Whalers performed at the IEM New York event, they're going to come in and hit the ground running when they get to their next one? Do you think they'll be more prepared to a great extent, or are you worried maybe that their skills and the lessons that they learned might atrophy when they go back to playing what they were at the level they were previously playing at before that event came in?
I'm gonna say that they're gonna be hitting the ground running. I think they hit a new stride that I have never seen them kind of hit before, and uh, I do think that they're going to show it. Although I'm gonna ignore this just for the sake that I want to have a little bit of optimism. But they just got 16-3 by Rugrats. Um, I don't know if you know that roster. They've got a sick lineup. Rugrats
Seems like
recently
another
made
one
a
of
couple
those mixed
changes.
teams, right?
Yeah, so right now it's Infinite, Cobra, Fang, CXZI, which isn't currently playing in the MDL roster, and then Raizu. I believe CXZI is just a sub for IE in Beijing, which is going to be like the next opportunity that we get to see the Whalers take on a couple of teams. But they've got a sick lineup. Rugrats is going to be an up and coming team that I kind of have a lot of hope for. But that's another story. I do think that Whalers are going to hit the ground running though. In Beijing, just because they showed a level again, like brand new to me. I haven't seen it in all my time casting MDL. They, I mean, the biggest thing was that Furia was ahead, I believe, on one of the maps, and they didn't let them win. Like that, doing that against Furia, like is one of, I think, probably going to be their biggest accomplishment in a long time. Like I've tried to make an excuse for Furia, but I can't think of one that's gonna like be acceptable. Like they went on and won the whole tournament, and the Whalers were the only one that was able to beat them in a best of three, which is just nuts to me. I think that shows, even if it's not in the long term, a definite like depth and skill that they can continue to use.
Another sort of question along the lines of getting gauging your practice and seeing how good you are developing as a team over a season or over a tournament is I've seen this example brought up by a number of different professional players or coaches, and they've always said that if you have you don't have the same amount of pop-off skill of raw aim or of discipline in terms of how you're drilled with your practices or your executions, your nade lineups, whatever the case may be, and you're trying to run something like an Astralis T side where you've got a super like by the numbers, by the books, like every detail scripted down. You're running one of their strats. The situation tends to come up that you're doing all these things right, but then at the end you don't get the kill. You just don't aim on and left click on their head, good enough, basically. Do you think that this is something that North American teams or just lower tier teams in general suffer from in a wide amount or a great amount, or do you think that this is a kind of an overblown narrative and there's more to it than just the fact that they're sort of like copying and pasting from other teams, but not having the requisite skill for them?
Yeah, no, trying to play an Astralis setup it takes having the best players in the world. And I kind of you bring up a really good point of just like having the perfect execution, but just missing out on the shot. And I feel like one of those teams is RBG, who have like all of the reads, all of the CT side setups, and then you'll have someone just miss a op shot or whatever the case is, and then the round will fall apart off of there. But um, yeah, that is exactly right. And a lot of times you're trying to do those more so on a team that can easily dismantle and easily read those sort of plays. Like if you're gonna try and do an Astralis setup on Furia, who's to say they're not going to push through the smoke and spray you down, and then no one's available for the trade because you're all lining up smokes or flashes or something. Like, it's just going to be it's a tough ask, and a lot of times I feel like if you are trying to upset teams, you've got to do it in a fashion that isn't so like steady. Maybe it relies more on like your individual like skill rather than your ability to work as a team. I don't know,
I
but
was curious about if you could help me characterize this sort of team, because this is a team that's quite famous around the world. It's Mythic, it's the Stream team.
yeah,
And I guess you can kind of trace part of its lineage back to the Old Guys Club from a long time ago, a couple years back, after the C9 era sort of started and stopped immediately after their major win. So I was curious to know what you thought about these guys in particular, because for me, when I look at the comment sections in any of these match threads where Mythic might end up like winning against a lower tier team but losing against a higher tier team, it seems like they're relatively good at essentially gatekeeping, right? The idea of they're going to come in, and if you're not good enough to beat them, you're not getting through them. They're very consistent, but they're not going to necessarily be able to reach for the stars in that sense. Something that I've seen levied as criticism for these guys is that they tend to, I guess the idea is that the general public reaction is these guys aren't really trying to win. They're not trying to be the best professionals they can be. They're streamers, right? And so they, people are almost kind of angry that they have this latent skill that allows them to just sort of coast at a comfortable, consistent level that they're at. But they know that they're not necessarily trying to win the whole event if they're at a tournament. So how would you characterize Mythic in general? How do you think that people should be perceiving them? And do you think that maybe there's some narratives out there or some opinions out there that are widely held but ultimately flawed in some crucial way?
yeah. So to start off, I think the idea that, and I'm sure like that it's not like 100% like they're not trying to win it is what people are saying. They're probably not trying as hard to win. Like, they're not putting in hours and hours of scrims like you see other teams do, and maybe that's kind of where they get their idea that they're not trying. But like, if you just watch one of their streams, like, and see how frustrated someone gets whenever they lose a game, like specifically if you watch the RBG game, like, oh, they were mad when they lost RBG. Like, it's very obvious when people are trying, because if you're losing, you get angry, you get tilted. And so it's just clear as day that that team was trying. There's no doubt in my mind, at least. But yeah, that argument I think is kind of easily dismantled. But as for the like gatekeeping of this team, it's definitely the case, because if you look at the teams that they've beat so far this season in MDL, it's basically all of the advanced move ups, besides I believe RBG, who they lost to, and they actually struggled against some of the MDL teams that are returning, like Eclipse, who has had a pretty tough season in general so far. They dropped in double OT. You saw that they went to like something like centuple OT versus Incognito, which is kind of a returning MDL team. They lost to RBG, who is a move up, but is one of the move ups that I think has so much potential. Um, but yeah, as for trying, they're trying. There's no doubt in my mind. But as for like a gatekeeping team, they have so much like skill and like mechanics on that roster that I think that they can pretty much beat down whoever isn't as skilled, basically.
Do you think that there's a future where we see some people who have moved on from Valorant who decide to come back after a while? And a lot of people have speculated whether or not Valorant pros who are ex CS pros are going to come back, assuming they're allowed to, obviously, assuming they can get the skills back up and all that stuff. But one example that I see touted a lot is like for Shroud or Steel or any of these people who obviously have a proven track record in this game, but also several other games. Maybe they'll come back. Maybe they'll form another team. And, the Shroud's last major team that I was personally aware of was obviously the Old Guys Club that I was mentioning earlier, where he almost was able to make a run to the major with them, but ultimately, due to some contractual agreements he had to, cancel off, and they ended up forfeiting a game that they were up in against, I think, Team One, who then later on went in to make the minor. So the curious case of some of these veteran players comes into play when we're talking about especially a scene that would really, they're sort of thirsting for that kind of veteran influence. Do you think that not only is there space for them when they decide to come back, assuming they can, cut it skill wise, but do you think that that's something that might happen based on your knowledge of the scene and of some of these players?
Yeah. I'm just kind of waiting it out. It's gonna be a long-term thing once you start to see the returns. And a lot of times I feel like the returns are gonna be like this is kind of my exit from competitive play. Like if you look at someone like Hazed, I could imagine him like I imagine he has a lot of love for CS:GO, but he's currently competing in Valorant at a top level, at the top of the top level, at least in North America, I believe, as of recent with the Nerd Street Gamers qualifiers for First Strike and all of that. Which it blows my mind whenever I watch people that kind of like are commentating in close relationship with Valorant because I have no idea what it looks like to be honest. I've caught a little bit of the recent stuff, but I really don't pay too much attention to it. But like the names that they say that are just doing crazy stuff in Valorant is like Hazed. Like when's the last time Hazed has done anything crazy in North American Counter Strike? Like no hate on him, but like what has he ever done that's been like, oh my gosh, like he just pushed through the cat smoke and killed 3 players like Flamey did or something like that. Like Hayes is just like a support player, a stable support player, but in Valorant he is like a king, which is really interesting to me. But um, I imagine like even if like someone like Shroud or someone like Jason R comes back, it would be awesome. Like I'd love that because it would bring all of his fans into Counter Strike again, which I'm sure not all of them have left. But if their fans are following for like someone like Jason R or someone like Shroud, they'll all follow him to whatever game he goes to. Like I don't know what it'll take for Counter Strike to kind of bring that appeal. I imagine something new and fresh like Source 2. I don't know. Um anything like that, but as for, like, just returning off of, like, no real reason, I think there needs to be something like Shiny and CS:GO again.
That is a curious question as well, because the topic of whether or not Valve is going to be kicked in the ass as a result of the Valorant launch and some of the players moving on and some of the like the more casual players as well, not just competitive players, but the player base of the game itself, in theory, could be detracted from as a result of Valorant's launch. Valorant itself was basically saying everything besides the dreaded CS:GO killer term. You know, fans of the game might have been touting that label, but the official PR was just like, we're trying to be like Counter Strike or something, as opposed to saying we're trying to kill it, because
Right.
so many other games have attempted that down the years, right? So, you know, before Valorant, it was Overwatch. Now it's Valorant. The case is now we're not really sure what its future is going to be. In theory, with the developer behind it, you know, you would say that it's a pretty big deal. It's probably not going to go anywhere. But given the fact that we are now dealing with, you know, still a very silent Valve, very non-transparent Valve, our own developer, the question has to be asked: what kind of things would you expect? You know, you mentioned Source 2 there, but do you think that there's some elements that Valve could do that are maybe a little bit easier, are on the easier side of development, that would bring some of those players from Valorant back, or at least entice them, be a little bit of a, you know, sweeten the pot a little bit and get them back in?
I don't know. Price pool increase, crowdfunding, map pool change ups, you know, operations are always good for player bases. Put back Cobble into the map pool, get those Dragon Lord drops. It can't hurt. For a Dragon Lord drop for the grand finals of a major, that would have million plus viewers, no doubt. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of stuff that Valve can do. I think one of the most appealing things, and this is, I mean, backed up by like stuff I've seen on Twitter from players that have switched over, is that the transparency, as you mentioned, from Valorant is like a breath of fresh air for so many of the players. Like being in the dark constantly as like a tournament organizer, a caster, a player, coaches, like orgs, all in the dark from Valve. Like one day they just ban coaches, you know, and then all of a sudden bring it back, and like with all of this coaching stuff going on, who's to say like this next major they're like, yeah, let's not do coaches. And if you're a tournament that's qualifying for the major, if you're an RMR event, like no coaches in there as well. Like it's so tough to say like what they need to do, but obviously there's some things right in front of their faces that they're just not reaching for. And that is my biggest fear for Counter Strike. Like when is it that Valve's gonna wake up, if ever? I imagine once Valorant starts to pick up some steam, once they see the numbers of like a first international tournament, like a first major ish tournament, they'll wake up. I mean, the Nerd Street Gamers numbers were crazy. They had like 30,000 viewers for North American games, which is pretty good. All things considered, if you're for a qualifier and for a match that isn't even the grand finals, like 20,000 to 30,000 viewers is much better than anything that North America's had so far. If you discount like Brazilian viewership and all of that, but yeah, there's so much stuff right in their face that they're not really reaching for, and that's my biggest fear, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, for those who aren't familiar, anyway, that I've been told by people that ESEA, the company that has, the corporation or the
Yeah,
organization that have been trying to make sure that there's some integrity in the esports space, those guys don't even have an official line with Valve, and they've received no communication from Valve. So the
that's
idea
one of
that
the things
yeah,
I was mentioning about. That is beyond crazy to me. Like these people are dishing out bans, and Valve is like not meant like not listening or not in constant contact. Like it blows my mind that that's the case. I don't know. It's such an easy reach for them too. All they have to do is reach out. Like they've got so much funding. They've got so much passion in the scene, and they're not like. You can argue that they never really have taken advantage of it. It's very frustrating.
yeah, another thing that I saw somewhat recently, within the last month or so, was that somebody had posted about a bug that they had reported that could have potentially been used to essentially like simulate footsteps or simulate auditory sounds from like farther away than where you are or further back from where you are. And basically it was like in a weird kind of way, it was like a wall hack or a map hack in a way where it would give away certain positional information about, like, you could hear a rotation when in theory you shouldn't be able to. It was as if
Yeah.
you were projecting yourself further out. So this sort of astral projection bug was reported through the back channels, and at some point was fixed maybe a couple weeks later, but they didn't even send the guy who sent the bug report in any sort of confirmation. They were like, "Oh,
Thank
we're working
you.
on
Like
it," or
you
yeah,
made
yeah,
my game better.
yeah. They didn't. I don't think they, sort of credited or even said anything about the bug. Like when they actually fixed the bug, they didn't say this is what it allowed you to do and this is why we fixed it. They just said like fixed a small niche sound bug, right? So it doesn't even seem like it was the same thing. And the guy had to go back in after that patch to test it to make sure that that was actually what was confirmed to fix it. So there's a lot of cases where people like ESEC or people like, these people who are doing these bug reports, the idea that they're going out of their way to make sure that the scene is a little bit more, has a little bit more integrity, a little bit more honorable, a little bit safer for competition. And those are the people who get like the cold shoulder or just no treatment at all. It's definitely baffling, especially when you compare it to Valorant. And the other thing that you mentioned a little bit earlier about Valorant too, that I think might be an underrated aspect of why people have switched over on a competitive side, is a lot of professional players, they haven't been able to hack it in CS, essentially. Like they've been replaced by higher skill players in North America, or they've been replaced by, it doesn't even have to be just a North American thing. Like we've seen Draken go over. There's hints that maybe Smooya will be going over. So there's some individuals out there on the European level. Scream, some of these people,
Mhm.
some might call washed up, but others might just say, oh, they were really good, but they had some personality conflicts or whatever the case may be. And it seems like this is an opportunity for them to realize their competitive dreams, their aspirations as a competitor in a field that hasn't yet developed enough to know whether or not they'll be there for a long amount of time. And so, in addition to the money, whatever their salaries end up being, whatever the prize pools end up being, this is like an opportunity for them to realize their competitive dreams, and in a way that they don't have to wait or they don't have to risk some upstart aim star coming up and
Yeah.
dethroning them essentially. So what would you say as far as the other, like that kind of incentive, the competitive angle? Do you think that those players will find lasting success in Valorant, or do you think that some players are going to come in from other FPS games or just come up through Valorant naturally and end up deposing of them as well?
I mean, what I secretly hope for, and I probably have around 100 hours in Valorant playing. And what I hope for is that the game, at least for Counter Strike players, you got the fundamental 5v5 aspect, but the aiming and the spray and the randomness of the recoil and the movement, the lack of like having to strafe, so many of the aspects that make CS:GO have that huge skill gap. That sort of reason why you don't see like a Deagle Ace from an MDL player or maybe even an advanced player, but you see a Deagle Ace from Happy on Banana, like it's very obvious that there's a little bit of a lacking in at least the mechanics of Valorant. Like it's a lot easier to just aim it and shoot ahead in Valorant than it is in CS:GO with the fact that there's no like strafing back and forth. Like I mean I'm not the greatest CS:GO player, but I have enough hours to like compare compare myself to a pretty decent player, above average at least, and going into Valorant, like you definitely feel like you're getting destroyed by players that have no business finding those sort of kills on you. At least if you like compare it to CS:GO, even the slow movement in Valorant is like a whole nother. It feels like a whole nother game in terms of the gun style and stuff. Certainly, like I've heard things about League of Legends, or rather Riot Games in general, that their kind of business model is like dumbing down games, which you see in like League of Legends, where it's like a kind of easy to understand, easy to grasp, better looking Dota. Same with their like uh, Teamfight Tactics game, which is their like battle chest version, and then I think they nailed it with Valorant.
So you think that essentially these people who are coming in for the competitive angle aren't, in some ways it'll almost feel hollow because of the fact that the game itself is a little bit of a lower skill level. You think that that might be a direction that some of those pros go?
Yeah, it's not going to be hollow. I feel like their success is gonna feel like very good. Will will it be lasting though? It's a tough question because I think they're gonna have just enough time to define the meta. As a CS:GO player with so much experience, they'll be able to nail down rotations. They'll nail down setups and executes and all of that. They'll teach all of these other like young players how to do it, and then they'll kind of dig their own grave as the new players get a hold of the mechanics, and I think you're gonna see some really nutty like Valorant players, like, and probably some even better plays in Valorant than you'll see in CS:GO because it's just like a little bit easier, you know? Like there's a little bit less of that skill gap, so you're gonna have some crazy up and comers who, as soon as they grasp that CS:GO like logic and rotations and all of that, the fundamentals of CS:GO that are kind of the same case in Valorant, you're gonna see. I think you're gonna kind of see them dig their own grave.
I have a couple of questions about your commentary career so far. And one of the things that I noticed when I was doing a bit of research was that you had done some open qualifiers. And on the topic of open qualifiers, it's a little bit different than when you're dealing with the same kind of teams in the same league. And you can kind of have some consistent grasp. No matter how crazy the roster moves get, you always sort of know what's going on with one team versus another. And you are able to do your research. And maybe it's like a roster swap between some sort of players you're already familiar with. Whereas if you're doing open quals, that can kind of go out the window depending on the circumstance, depending on the region. And so you might be up against, casting a bunch of different series in a grueling schedule of a bunch of teams that you don't really know that much of. So I was curious how you sort of what your strategy was when you're trying to deliver obviously a quality cast, and you might not have the backing of really knowing like who the stars are on a certain team, who the IGL is, and you kind of have to reverse engineer that based on some very quick research that you're able to do, or just watching in the game and sort of like your own understanding unfolding as time goes on, as you see this sort of the events and the sort of tactics of a team or the tendencies that they have. So how do you balance some of those things when you're doing the casting? How do you handle like having low or no prep going into a series that you have to cast, and you have to deliver some sort of information to the audience?
Yeah, so a lot of it can be just acting. Like sometimes you've got to say things, and truthfully, you have no idea. Like a specific example of this is I just recently picked up a gig with the collegiate CS scene,
Yes.
and like I know a few of these players from ESEA. I've casted some like of their matches, but like some of these players aren't even in open leagues. So like trying to bring in like any sort of like experience, any sort of like pre-game knowledge uh, into like a collegiate game where you've got like five main players versus five like level six face it players who are playing CS:GO for fun. Um, I'm not gonna say that the team that I casted last night was level six, but they got like 16-0 nearly, so it definitely felt like that. Um, but it's just acting at certain points of time. As for like open qualifiers in general, though, um, it's either finding your research on the fly and making like broad generalizations. Asking your co-caster. I typically cast with the Canadian A, who's has a lot of experience at MDL. I believe he's been casting for a couple seasons now in Mountain Dew League. So he's got plenty of experience. I can come to him if I ever have any questions about players. But yeah, making generalizations and then like just watching the game and seeing every player's play style. Like if you see someone who's super aggressive, you can mention that. But it definitely it's very tricky. Like the open qualifiers that I've casted, Beyond the Summit was the first one that I've ever casted, and that was like 2 weeks into my casting career. I'm pretty new to it, and I was casting Team One with like 2,000 viewers. No idea any of the names on Team One. Like I'd never watched Team One play before. I was only watching Tier One CS, and like I was just brand new to casting. I was following everything that the Canadian said. Like I was like, "Oh yeah, and this guy is exactly what you said," or something like that. It was very scuffed, and it's definitely like the open qualifiers. It does feel a little bit painful. But now that I've casted for so long, I've casted most of the teams that are in open qualifiers, or at least know the players on the teams. So it does get easier with more experience.
One of the other things that when it comes to commentating games or taking a look at, trying to sell storylines or trying to deliver some sort of analysis, the question comes up when there are these games that feel a little fishy, we'll say, and maybe there are, some of the players who are in these games have been, named in the ESEA investigation about match fixing. So, in a roundabout way, I am curious as to whether or not this is something that you were able to pick up on or had suspicions of, especially since even if you don't know or know enough to know like for sure about what they're doing, what somebody's doing, if there's the rumor of it and the idea that maybe that's coming out before the ESEC investigations even land and actually name players, it might be in the back of your mind even while casting to that maybe some of these players aren't trying as hard as they could be, or maybe some of these players are up to something nefarious. Was that something that colored your casting when you were in the middle of doing some of these lower tier games? Was that something that maybe changed how you approached the casting of those particular matches?
So all of my HLTV matches, which is like a majority of the matches that people bet on, some of them have been in advanced, which advanced like they have HLTV access like for the finals. It's only like I believe the semifinals, the consolation finals, and the lower bracket, and then the grand finals of advanced, like the move up. Um, but it is very interesting. Uh, in my casting, I probably never really gonna bring up any like throwing or anything. Um, and I really haven't noticed anything as a caster, just because if you're an MDL team or an MDL player and you're match fixing right now while there's an active investigation against match fixing, like honestly, you're just like you deserve to be banned like that. And like I couldn't even make it a case for you not to get on ban because like that's so stupid. Like you why would you do that while there's an active on investigate? I mean, I don't want you to do it at all. Like, I'm not condoning it, but if you're gonna do it, make sure that it's not on anyone's radar, like actively. Like,
Yeah, just common
be
sense
be a
stuff,
be a
right?
smart be a smart criminal if you're gonna be a criminal at all. But yeah, as for casting currently, like I haven't really seen anything. Not I guess fishy is not the best word, but like nothing that screams out to me. I've heard rumors, of course, but um just waiting for that sweet, sweet ESIC investigation whenever it does come. The Australian one was really fun to see. Um, just because it kind of gave me some hope that it was still on the way.
Yeah, of course, there's some law enforcement connections as well. And so, one of the things that you brought up, obviously, is that since there's an ongoing investigation, presumably that means that everybody's smartened up and not doing it anymore in the current matches. So, do you think that that was kind of like a sigh of relief when you heard about at least it coming in at that point? Because obviously rumors circulated beforehand, but at that point you were like, okay, people are going to smarten up now, and now I don't have to worry about that being in the back of my mind or whatever. Was that something that kind of like allowed you to get further invested in, or was it kind of business as usual anyway?
Yeah, it definitely like I came into it knowing that like these people are grown adults, and like again, I don't think that anyone would be dumb enough to like commit a crime where it's like I imagine it as like there's a detective like you know going at a murder crime scene, and then like right next to the detective you just kill somebody, and then like you found the murderer. So same sort of scenario. I imagine that people aren't going to be doing that, and so yeah, I feel a lot more comfortable in my casting this season, like not having to worry about the match fixers. Although even before this is my first season, well, I guess it's my second, um, first and a half technically, but first on my channel at least where I've consistently casted MDL, and I've heard rumors prior. But I did go into things imagining that there would be some competitive integrity just because of the situation that the players are in.
And as we're approaching towards the end of the interview, I did have a couple of like sort of wrap up questions, I suppose. So for people who are interested in diving, taking that deep dive into the lower tier of North American CS, they're trying to get interested in some of these up and coming teams that might show up at some of these tier one or tier two events that similar to what happened with the New England Whalers. Is there any sort of advice you have for them, or any angle you want to sell them on? Any sort of idea of how they might be able to get really invested in this sort of lower tier of North American CS?
Yeah, the best way to do it is through HLTV. Like HLTV will have every match. There's plenty of casters. Some of my competition, um, are casting it and do a great job of casting. So you can get involved with like the casters. A lot of times they'll interact with you in chat. Like they're not only casting the game, although they're highly focused on the game. Like it's a more personalized experience. It can be a lot of fun to chat and like talk about a specific game with a caster who knows a lot about the teams, and that's just an easy access point for you. Um, as well as if you're trying to improve, if you're like a young North American up and comer and you've just started like with your new team, tune in to a stream, catch what these MDL players are doing. You might hear some color commentating that gives you a idea of what you got in store and what you got in mind for your own team.
And are there any shout outs or final words you have for us as we're coming to the end here?
Yeah. I am xner20 on Twitter at xner20. I am also a content creator for Thin Impact, one of the teams competing in MDL. I don't really do too much with them, but I do. I've been looking into creating content with them. So big shout out to them and their sponsors, Vita Ramen, Advanced, and then Nova. But yeah, mostly my next big thing is next big caster. That'll kind of put me on the ESEA channel. It'll be really huge for my future for casting. I put a lot of work into it, so hopefully I get a opportunity to join up with them on the ESEA channel as kind of a step forward. So I will be posting some more news on my Twitter later if you all want to stay tuned with that.